Why do some people turn small ideas into massive results, while others sit on brilliant ideas for years? It's not creativity, it's not resources, it's not timing, it's execution thinking. Most people mistake thinking for progress. They plan, they research, they overanalyze, and they call it productivity. But ideas without structure die quietly. Turn ideas into action, simple critical thinking techniques. You'll learn how to break ideas down, pressure test them, and convert them into clear, decisive steps. No fluff, no endless motivation, just practical mental frameworks that move you forward. Because the real gap in life isn't between smart and average, it's between thinkers and doers. And the ones who know how to bridge that gap, they win. If you're ready to stop sitting on potential and start building results, like this video, subscribe for more strategic insights, and share it with someone who has ideas but needs momentum. Chapter 1. The moment you stop waiting, you already know what it feels like to get an idea that lights you up. Your mind speeds up. You can see it finished. You can see people using it, buying it, praising it. You can see a different life. Then the day keeps moving. The phone keeps buzzing. The bills keep coming. And that bright idea gets pushed into the back of your head, like a flyer you meant to read later. A week passes. A month passes. The idea is still there, but now it feels heavier. Not because it got harder, because you didn't move. Here's the truth you need to hear without sugarcoating. Ideas are cheap. Everyone has them. The difference between a person who builds a life they respect and a person who stays stuck is not talent, it's not luck, it's not even motivation. It's the ability to think clearly when it matters and act decisively before the moment fades. Critical thinking isn't a fancy academic skill. It's a street-level survival tool. It's the muscle that keeps you from lying to yourself. It's the system that turns a spark into steps. And if you learn a few simple techniques, you stop being the kind of person who collects possibilities and start being the kind of person who produces outcomes. Imagine a guy in Ohio, mid-30s, working a solid job, not miserable but not proud either. He has an idea for a mobile detailing business. He sees trucks in parking lots and thinks, "They pay for this." He watches videos, checks equipment prices, tells friends about it. He even designs a logo in his head, but every time he's about to act, he gets hit by a wave of questions. What if no one hires me? What if I waste money? What if I look stupid? The fear doesn't show up as fear, it shows up as research. More videos, more articles, more preparation. Months later, he's still wiping down his own car in the driveway, feeling a quiet annoyance with himself. Now picture the same person with a critical thinking toolset. He doesn't try to solve the entire business in his head. He doesn't demand certainty before he moves. He treats the idea like a claim that needs testing. He makes one decision. I will run a simple experiment, not a full launch, not a grand opening, a test. He prints 20 flyers at a local shop, sets up a basic booking page, and spends Saturday morning handing them out in neighborhoods where driveways are full and cars are clean enough to show people care. He posts in 2 local community groups with clear pricing and before and after pictures of his own car. Within a week, he books one job. That one job becomes proof. Not proof the business will be huge. Proof that action creates information, and information kills fantasy. Information gives you the next move. That is where this chapter begins, not with inspiration, with a hard shift in how you treat your thoughts. Your brain will always offer you stories. Some are useful, some are excuses dressed up as logic. Critical thinking is how you tell the difference. Start with a simple question that changes everything. What do I actually know? And what am I assuming? You think your idea won't work? Do you know it won't work? Or are you assuming? You think you don't have time? Do you know you don't have time? Or are you assuming based on how your evenings usually disappear? You think you need a perfect plan. Do you know that perfection is required? Or are you assuming because it feels safer? Assumptions are not evil, they're normal, but unchecked assumptions become chains. They keep you stuck in mental loops, and the more intelligent you are, the more creative you become at defending those loops. Here's a real-world example you've seen 1,000 times. Someone says they want to get in shape. They know they can't. Their job is demanding. Their knees hurt. They've tried before. They tell themselves a story about why it won't work. But what do they actually know? They know they have a schedule. They know their body feels a certain way right now. They know past attempts failed, that's it. Everything else is interpretation. When you separate facts from interpretation, you regain power. So the first technique is this: split your thinking into facts and stories. Facts are observable. Stories are the meaning you attach to facts. Facts: I work from 8 to 5. Story: I'm too exhausted to do anything after work. Facts: my last attempt lasted 2 weeks. Story: I always quit. Facts: I don't know how to start a podcast. Story: I'm not the type of person who can build an audience. When you do this, you stop arguing with yourself emotionally, and you start working with reality. Reality is not your enemy. Reality is a map, and maps let you move. Now the next technique, and this is where action begins. Make the idea smaller until it becomes executable today. Most people fail at turning ideas into action because they hold the entire idea in their mind like a heavy box and then wonder why they don't feel like lifting it. Your brain sees a business, a book, a career change, a fitness transformation, and it panics. It starts searching for danger. It tries to keep you safe by delaying. That delay feels like thinking. It feels responsible, but it's cowardice wearing a tie. The disciplined move is to reduce the idea to the next physical action. Not the best action, not the perfect action, the next action. If your idea is to start a side hustle, your next physical action might be to message 3 people who fit your target customer and ask what they struggle with. If your idea is to write a book, your next physical action might be to write a messy 1-page outline and give it a file name, because now it exists. If your idea is to get a promotion, your next physical action might be to schedule a 10-minute conversation with your manager and ask what the next level requires. These actions are not glamorous. That's why they work. They are small enough to do, but real enough to create momentum. Momentum is the real currency, not inspiration. Momentum makes you feel like a builder instead of a dreamer. Momentum changes your identity. In America, we're surrounded by a culture that worships big wins, the viral success story, the overnight millionaire, the sudden transformation, but most real progress is quiet and repetitive. It's a person doing small, correct things when no one is clapping. It's a person doing the next step, even when they don't feel ready. That is what disciplined people do, and disciplined people aren't special. They're trained. Training starts by asking a better question. Instead of asking, "How do I make this work?" ask, "What would a test look like?" A test is honest. A test is humble. A test doesn't need your ego to survive. A test is designed to produce data, and data is oxygen for action. Let's say your idea is to open a food truck. That's huge, but a test could be simple. You could cook the menu for 5 friends and ask them to pay what they think it's worth. You could set up at a local event as a pop-up with a limited batch. You could run a weekend pre-order pickup out of your home if local rules allow it. The point isn't to skip responsibility. The point is to learn before you leap. Critical thinking turns "I hope" into "I know more than I did yesterday." Now let's talk about the mental trap that kills action, confusing clarity with confidence. People say, "Once I feel confident, I'll start." But confidence is usually the result, not the requirement. Clarity comes from doing. You don't get a clear picture of the road by standing still. You get it by walking far enough to see the next turn. So here's your rule. You earn clarity through contact with reality. Make the call, send the message, publish the first version, show up for the first workout, apply for the job, ask for feedback. Your mind will complain, it will offer 100 reasons to wait. But those reasons are often just fear of discomfort. Discomfort is not danger, it's tuition. When you pay that tuition, you get a return. You get evidence that you can move even when it's messy. You get a stronger identity. You stop needing perfect conditions. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. Now let's anchor this with a metaphor you can feel. Think of your idea like a seed. In your mind, it's already a tree. You see shade, fruit, strength. But in reality, it's a seed. A seed doesn't become a tree by being admired. It becomes a tree by being planted. Watered, exposed to weather, and given time. And the planting is always awkward. It's dirt under your nails. It's uncertainty. It's doing something small that doesn't look impressive yet. Critical thinking is how you plant correctly. It's how you choose soil. It's how you avoid watering a fantasy and neglecting a real process. So let's take your seed and plant it with a simple sequence you can repeat. First, state the idea in one sentence that a stranger would understand. If you can't explain it clearly, you can't act on it consistently. Clarity begins with language. I want to build a budgeting app for new grads. I want to start a weekend pressure washing service. I want to train for a half marathon by summer. One sentence, no fluff. Second, identify the main obstacle, not 10 obstacles. The main one, is it money, time, skill, fear of judgment? Be honest. The main obstacle is often emotional, not logistical. Many people say time, when it's really avoidance. Third, choose a test that takes less than 1 week. Less than 1 week forces you to stop making it a lifelong project in your head. It makes it real. A week is long enough to do something meaningful and short enough to keep urgency. Fourth, decide what success looks like for the test, not for your life, for the test. If you're testing a service, success might be 3 conversations with potential customers. If you're testing a creative project, success might be publishing the first piece. If you're testing a career move, success might be applying to 5 roles and having 1 informational interview. The success measure keeps you grounded. Fifth, schedule it, not "I'll do it sometime." Put it on a day and time. America runs on calendars. If it isn't on a calendar, it's a wish. When you do this sequence, you create a bridge from thought to action. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop waiting for a mood. You become a person who executes, and something else happens. You start trusting yourself. Self-trust isn't built by promising. It's built by keeping small commitments. Every time you do the next step, you tell your brain, "I am reliable." That becomes your new normal. Now you might be thinking, what if I pick the wrong idea? What if I waste time? That question sounds smart, but it hides a deeper fear. The fear is not wasting time. The fear is being wrong in public or being wrong to yourself. But here's what critical thinking teaches. The fastest way to the right idea is through small, structured attempts. You don't find direction by sitting perfectly still. You find it by moving and adjusting. The wrong idea isn't the enemy. The untested idea is. Untested ideas become regrets. Tested ideas become lessons or wins. Either way, you grow. And growth is the real point. Not because growth is a pretty concept, because stagnation is painful. It turns into cynicism. It turns into blaming. It turns into the quiet belief that life happens to you. You are not here to be a spectator in your own life. You are here to build. As this chapter closes, bring your mind back to your own reality. Think about the idea that keeps returning, the one that won't leave you alone. What facts do you have about it? And what stories have you been telling yourself? What is the smallest test you could run in the next 7 days? That would give you real information. What is the next physical action you can schedule? Not as a dream, as an appointment with your future. And if you did that one action this week, what would it prove about the kind of person you are becoming? Chapter 2. Thinking like a builder, not a dreamer. Last chapter, you drew a hard line between facts and stories, because stories can keep you comfortable while your life stays the same. You learn to shrink any big idea into the next physical action, and to run small tests that create real information. You stopped treating clarity like something you wait for, and started treating it like something you earn by contacting reality. Now we take the next step, because action without judgment turns into busy work. You can move fast and still move in circles if you don't know how to evaluate what matters. Critical thinking is not just about getting started. It's about choosing wisely, adjusting quickly, and staying disciplined when your emotions start lobbying for shortcuts. There's a moment that hits almost everyone who begins to act. You start a test, you send messages, you publish a first version, you show up to the gym, you apply for roles, and suddenly you're standing in front of a messy pile of feedback and outcomes. Some things work, some don't. People respond in ways you didn't predict. You feel a strange mix of excitement and doubt. This is where most people fall into one of two traps. Trap 1 is emotional whiplash. A good result makes them feel unstoppable, so they sprint without thinking. A bad result makes them feel ashamed, so they quit or hide. Trap 2 is false logic. They pick a single outcome and declare it proof that the whole idea is either brilliant or hopeless. One successful post means they've made it. One ignored email means they never will. That's not thinking. That's gambling with your future based on feelings. If you want to turn ideas into action consistently, you need a way to evaluate results without drama. You need a way to decide what to do next without needing a perfect mood. You need a way to protect your momentum from your own mental noise. Here's the technique. Treat your actions like experiments, and treat your conclusions like provisional judgments. That word matters. Provisional. It means you're willing to update. You're not married to your first interpretation. You're not building your identity on being right. You're building your life on learning fast. Picture a woman in Texas who wants to change careers into project management. She takes a course, rewrites her resume, starts applying, and gets rejected again and again. The emotional interpretation is immediate. I'm not qualified. I'm too late. This is embarrassing. But a provisional judgment sounds different. My current resume and approach are not getting interviews. That is not a verdict on my worth. It's a signal that something in the system needs adjustment, so she tests adjustments. She speaks to someone already in the field and learns her resume reads like a list of tasks, not outcomes. She changes it. She practices interviews with a friend and realizes she can't explain her experience with clear numbers. She fixes that. She targets roles that match her transferable skills rather than titles that sound prestigious. 2 weeks later, she gets her first screening call. Nothing magical happened. She didn't become a new person overnight. She simply used critical thinking to separate the result from the story and used the result as direction. You need that same mindset, because the world will not give you clean, comforting feedback. The world gives you data. Your job is to interpret it like a builder. Now let's get concrete. When you run a test, you need to measure the right thing. If you measure the wrong thing, you'll make the wrong decision. Most people measure outcomes too early. They measure money before they've measured demand. They measure followers before they've measured whether they can produce consistently. They measure motivation before they've measured their ability to keep a schedule. They want the trophy before they've built the structure that can hold it. So you will use leading indicators. Leading indicators are actions and signals that predict success later. If you're building a service, a leading indicator is conversations with potential customers, responses to your offer, repeat interest, referrals, and whether people ask follow-up questions. If you're building fitness, a leading indicator is sessions completed, consistency per week, sleep quality, performance improvements, not just the scale. If you're building a career shift, a leading indicator is interviews secured, informational calls completed, new skills applied in a real project, and the quality of your network conversations. This matters because early outcomes can lie. You can get a sale from a friend and think you've got a market. You can lose weight from water changes and think your plan is perfect. You can get one interview because the hiring manager is desperate and think your resume is flawless. Leading indicators keep you honest. Here's another technique that keeps your decision-making clean. Ask yourself, what would have to be true for this to work? Not in a dreamy way, in a practical way. If you want a weekend pressure washing business to work, what has to be true? People have to be willing to pay more than your costs. You have to be able to reach them. You have to be able to do the work safely and consistently. You have to deliver results that lead to repeat business or referrals. Each of those truths can be tested. You can validate pricing by asking. You can validate reach by posting and tracking responses. You can validate delivery by doing a few jobs and getting photos and testimonials. When you ask what has to be true, you stop obsessing over everything that could go wrong and start focusing on the few variables that actually control the outcome. Most ideas don't fail because of 1,000 problems. They fail because of 1 or 2 untested assumptions. And now, a hard truth. You will not think your way out of uncertainty. You will decide your way through it. In the United States, we're taught that smart people think first and act second. But in real life, smart builders think, act, learn, and repeat. They don't wait for certainty. They create it in pieces. This is where people get stuck on research. They call it preparation, but it's really avoidance. Preparation has an end point and produces an artifact. Avoidance has no end point and produces anxiety. So you're going to use a simple rule to keep yourself clean. If you can't name the decision your research supports, you're not preparing. If you're watching videos about starting a business, what decision are you trying to make? Pricing, target customer, equipment purchase. If you can't answer, shut it down and move to a test. The goal is not to know everything. The goal is to know enough to act. Then let reality teach you the rest. Now let's talk about the most dangerous lie your brain tells: I can do it later. Later is a fantasy place where you have more time, more energy, more confidence, and fewer responsibilities. Later is where goals go to die politely. Later is the soft pillow that smothers urgency. Disciplined people don't rely on urgency like a mood. They build urgency into their structure. They create deadlines, constraints, and commitments that force action even when it's inconvenient. Here's a technique for that. Create a decision window. A decision window is a short, specific time frame where you commit to choosing. Not choosing is still a choice, and it's usually the worst one. If you're deciding whether to launch a small online store, give yourself 72 hours to define a test and schedule it. If you're deciding whether to apply for a role, give yourself 24 hours to send the application. If you're deciding whether to start training, give yourself tonight to schedule tomorrow's session and set your gear out. A decision window works because it blocks endless negotiation. Your brain will always want to renegotiate when discomfort is near. A decision window is you saying, we are not renegotiating our future. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. Now we move into the adjustment loop, because action without adjustment is stubbornness, and adjustment without action is procrastination. You need both. Here's the loop you will live by: observe, interpret, decide, execute. Observe means you look at what happened without excuses. Interpret means you separate facts from stories and form a provisional judgment. Decide means you choose one change to make. Execute means you run the next test and keep moving. One change, not 10. When you change too many variables at once, you can't tell what caused improvement. People do this all the time. They change their diet, workout plan, sleep schedule, supplements, daily routine in 1 week, then get confused about what worked. Or they change their marketing message, pricing, platform, target audience, all at once. Then wonder why results are inconsistent. One change per cycle keeps your thinking clean. Let's ground it with a real-world scenario. A man in Florida wants to start a simple weekend handyman service. He posts online offering general repairs, and the response is lukewarm. He interprets it emotionally. Nobody wants this, but he slows down and thinks like a builder. Observe. His message was vague. Interpret. People can't buy what they can't picture. Decide. He will narrow the offer to 3 specific services that are common pain points: ceiling fan installation, TV mounting, minor drywall patching. Execute. He posts again with clear pricing ranges and pictures of neat work. Now he gets responses, not because the market magically changed, because his thinking got sharper. He didn't need more motivation. He needed better specificity. This is critical thinking in the real world. It's not about sounding smart. It's about getting results. There's another mental shift that will protect you. Stop asking, is this a good idea? And start asking, is this a good next step? A good next step is one that is low risk, produces information, and moves you closer to a decision. A good next step doesn't need to guarantee success. It only needs to reduce uncertainty. If you want to start a podcast, a good next step is recording 1 episode and sending it to 3 people you trust for feedback on clarity and energy. If you want to start investing more seriously, a good next step is building a simple budget and an automated savings plan so your foundation is stable. If you want to run a marathon, a good next step is a 4-week consistency streak, not a heroic 10-mile run that wrecks you. This is how you become consistent. You design steps that you can repeat. Repeatability matters more than intensity. Intensity feels heroic. Repeatability builds a life. Now I want you to understand something deeply. Your mind will try to protect your ego by making your idea your identity. You'll start saying, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a writer, I'm a future athlete, I'm a creator. That can be motivating, but it can also be a trap because when your identity is on the line, feedback feels like an attack. And when feedback feels like an attack, you stop learning. So keep your identity anchored in process, not outcome. You are not your results. You are your standards. You are your commitments. You are the person who runs tests, learns, adjusts, and repeats. That identity is unbreakable because it doesn't require applause. It only requires you to show up and do the next right thing. And let's be honest, you will have days when you don't want to. You will have days when your mind presents a convincing case for quitting. That's not a sign you're weak. That's a sign you're human. The disciplined move is to expect those days and to act anyway. So build a default action for low motivation days. A minimum viable action. That keeps the chain unbroken. 10 minutes of writing, a short walk, one outreach message, one application, one page of notes. You are not trying to win the day. You are trying to protect the habit of movement, because movement is what separates the person who talks from the person who builds. As you step forward from this chapter, let the narration settle into your bones. Where have you been measuring the wrong thing too early? And what leading indicators would tell you the truth? What assumption have you been treating like a fact? And what small test would force reality to answer you? What decision window can you set so later stop stealing your life? And what single change will you make? In your next observe, interpret, decide, execute cycle to keep your momentum honest and strong. Chapter 3. Cut through your own bias. You've already learned to separate facts from stories. Shrink big ideas into the next physical action and run short tests that produce real information. You've learned to measure leading indicators, set decision windows, and use an adjustment loop so you don't drift into either stubbornness or procrastination. Now it's time to face the quiet enemy that can sabotage all of it, the way your own mind bends reality. When your emotions are involved, your brain is not designed to help you win. It's designed to help you feel safe. It will protect your ego. It will protect your comfort. It will protect the version of you that doesn't have to risk embarrassment. And it will do it with thoughts that sound reasonable. That's why you can be disciplined in one area and totally irrational in another. That's why you can run clean tests at work and then make sloppy decisions in your personal life. That's why you can see other people's excuses easily, but defend your own without noticing. The skill you're building here is the ability to catch your mind in the act. Not with self-hate, with precision. Let's start with a simple reality. You are biased. So am I. Everyone is. The question isn't whether you have bias. The question is whether you have a method that prevents bias from steering the wheel. There's a guy in California who wants to start investing. He hears a coworker talk about a stock that can't miss. He watches it rise for a few weeks and feels that familiar itch. The story starts running. I'm late. Everyone else is making money. This is my chance to catch up. That story is powerful because it blends fear and hope. And fear and hope make people do stupid things fast, so he throws in money without a plan, without understanding what he's buying, without knowing what would make him sell. 2 months later the price drops. He panics, sells at a loss, and tells himself investing is a scam. It wasn't a scam, it was undisciplined thinking. Here's the technique that would have saved him. Decide your rules before your emotions show up. Your emotions aren't the problem. The problem is letting emotions write policy. When money is on the line, when pride is on the line, when your identity is on the line, you will rationalize, you will call it intuition. You will call it a gut feeling, but without pre-made rules. Gut feeling usually means temporary emotion with a confident voice. So you will start using decision rules. Simple ones, clear ones, written ones. If you're building a side business, a decision rule might be, I don't buy equipment until I've had 5 real customer conversations and 2 paid jobs. If you're changing careers, a decision rule might be, I apply only to roles where I can name 3 skills I've already used in real situations, and I don't stop until I've sent 20 applications and improved my resume twice based on feedback. If you're improving health, a decision rule might be, I don't change my routine based on 1 bad day. I evaluate trends over 2 weeks. Rules protect you from the most common trap, making big decisions based on tiny samples. Your brain loves tiny samples because they let you feel certain quickly. 1 compliment means you're gifted. 1 criticism means you're doomed. 1 good week means you've cracked the code. 1 setback means you should quit. That's not reality, that's emotional math. So you will also use a technique called the 3-point check. Before you draw a conclusion, you ask, do I have at least 3 separate data points? If you posted your offer once and no one responded, that's 1 data point. It might mean the offer is bad, or it might mean the timing was wrong, or the message was unclear, or you posted where the wrong people were looking. You need more. If you trained twice and your knee hurt, that's 1 data point. You need to examine form, volume, recovery, history, before you declare the whole goal impossible. 3 data points won't make you omniscient, but it will keep you from making your future smaller. Because of 1 moment. Now let's attack another bias that destroys action, the bias of familiarity. People choose what feels familiar over what is objectively better. They keep the same job because the discomfort is known. They keep the same habits because the pain is predictable. They keep the same friend circles because starting fresh feels risky. Familiarity can feel like safety, but it's often just a comfortable cage. So here's the technique. Compare costs, not feelings. When you're thinking about a new step, your brain will highlight the immediate discomfort of the new choice and hide the long-term discomfort of staying the same. You need to force a fair comparison. There's a woman in Michigan who wants to go back to school to earn a credential that would increase her income. She feels anxious about tuition and time. Those feelings are loud because they're immediate, but she never calculates the cost of staying where she is, the income she won't earn, the opportunities she won't qualify for, the years of frustration that stack up quietly. The technique is to ask, what is the cost of inaction over the next 12 months? That question doesn't guilt you, it clarifies the stakes. It pulls the hidden cost into the light so you can make a grown-up decision. Now let's build a method that will make you sharper in every area of life. The decision journal. This is simple, and it's powerful because it forces honesty. Every time you make a meaningful decision, you write down 4 things in plain language. You write what you are deciding, why you are deciding it, what you expect to happen, and what would change your mind later. You're not writing a novel, you're creating a record. That protects you from rewriting history because your mind does something sneaky. When results come in, you'll pretend you knew it all along. If the decision works, you'll tell yourself you were brilliant. If it fails, you'll tell yourself it was obvious it would fail. That ruins learning. A decision journal keeps the learning clean. It forces you to compare what you expected with what happened. That's how you improve judgment. Imagine a small business owner in Georgia deciding whether to raise prices. If he journals it, he might write, "I'm raising prices by 15% because my costs increased and my bookings are steady. I expect 3 outcomes: fewer inquiries, higher revenue per job, and fewer low-quality customers. I'll evaluate after 4 weeks, and I'll adjust if bookings drop below a specific number." That single page turns anxiety into a plan. And later, he won't be guessing. He'll know what happened. Now we need to talk about the ego trap that makes people stubborn: defending sunk costs. Sunk costs are what you've already spent: time, money, effort, reputation. Your brain hates admitting those costs didn't buy the outcome you wanted, so it tries to justify them by spending more. This is how people stay in failing projects, bad relationships, dead-end strategies, far longer than they should. Critical thinking asks a brutal but freeing question: if I were starting today, would I choose this again? If the answer is no, you don't double down just because you've already invested. You adjust, you pivot, you cut losses, you keep your pride intact by being honest, not by being stubborn. There's a man in New York building a digital product. He spends 6 months creating features he thinks people want. He launches, and nobody buys. The sunk cost voice says, "Keep going. You've already spent too much time to stop." But the builder voice says, "The time is already spent. The question is what to do next." So he talks to real customers, discovers the product solves a problem they don't feel urgently, and adjusts the offer to a simpler, more painful problem they will pay to fix. The work wasn't wasted. It became education, but only because he refused to worship the past. Now let's sharpen your action with another technique: the pre-decision stress test. Before you commit to a path, you ask yourself, what is the most likely way this will fail? And what will I do when it does? This isn't pessimism, this is preparation. Discipline is not being surprised by predictable problems. If you're starting a fitness routine, the most likely failure point might be late nights and mornings that start rushed, so you plan for it. You schedule workouts for lunch. You pack gym clothes the night before. You choose a short routine you can do, even on busy days. If you're building content online, the failure point might be inconsistency, so you plan for it. You batch create on Sundays. You keep a list of topics. You set a minimum output. That's easy to maintain if you're building a service business. The failure point might be flaky customers, so you plan for it: deposits, clear cancellation policies, and confirming appointments. The goal is not to prevent every problem. The goal is to prevent predictable problems from derailing you emotionally. Because that's what happens. A problem hits, you act shocked, you take it personally, you lose momentum. The disciplined person expects friction. They don't romanticize the path, they prepare for it. Now you're going to adopt one more habit that separates amateurs from builders. You will stop making decisions in your head. Your head is a courtroom where every emotion gets a lawyer. Writing forces clarity. Speaking out loud to a trusted person forces clarity. Putting numbers on paper forces clarity. When decisions stay inside your mind, They stay foggy and they stay vulnerable to fear. So when you're stuck, do this. Externalize the decision. Write it, sketch it, map it, or talk it through. The goal isn't to sound smart. The goal is to see what you're actually thinking. And when you do that, you'll notice something. Many of your complex problems are just unclear problems. Once clarified, they become actionable. You're building a life where your choices are not dictated by moods, trends, or the opinions of the loudest voice in the room. You're building a life where you can look at a decision and say, I chose this for clear reasons. I tested it honestly. I learned from the results, and I adjusted without drama. That's what it means to think like a builder. Now, let this chapter land in a personal way. Where have you been letting familiarity win over progress? Where have you been making big conclusions from tiny samples? What decision rules would protect you from emotional choices? And what would you write in a decision journal today? So your future self can learn without rewriting history. What are you clinging to because of sunk costs? And if you were starting fresh right now, would you choose it again? If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now, let's continue. Chapter 4. Decide what matters and cut the rest. Up to now, you've learned to move from ideas to tests instead of fantasies, to judge progress with leading indicators instead of emotional swings, and to run a clean observe, interpret, decide, execute loop. You've also learned to protect yourself from your own bias by setting rules before emotions, using multiple data points, journaling decisions, and refusing to worship sunk costs. Now we sharpen the blade even further. Because the next enemy isn't confusion, it's clutter. Most people don't fail because they lack potential. They fail because they try to carry too much at once. They say yes to everything that feels productive, then wonder why nothing becomes real. Their calendar is full, their mind is crowded, and their results are thin. They're moving, but they're not building. Critical thinking is not only about spotting bad ideas, it's about choosing the right idea to act on now. You can have 10 good options and still ruin your life by picking the wrong one at the wrong time. That's why disciplined people don't just act. They prioritize like their future depends on it, because it does. There's a man in Illinois who decides he wants to level up. He hears about investing, starting a business, learning a new skill, getting in shape, improving his relationship, and building an online brand. He tries to do it all. He wakes up early for workouts, stays up late watching tutorials, posts content every day, applies for promotions, and tracks expenses obsessively. For 2 weeks he feels powerful, then his sleep collapses, his workouts become inconsistent, he starts snapping at people, his content gets sloppy, his job performance dips. Now he feels guilty, so he pushes harder. That's not discipline, that's panic with a planner. The problem isn't ambition. The problem is a lack of prioritization logic. When you don't have a method, your priorities get chosen by whatever feels urgent, whatever feels exciting, or whatever makes you feel like you're becoming someone new. But growth doesn't happen by doing more. It happens by doing what matters, long enough, with consistency. Here's the technique that changes the game. Choose one main target and 2 supporting targets for a season. A season is not forever. It's a defined stretch where you commit to building a specific outcome. When you choose one main target, you remove the constant internal debate. You stop waking up each day asking, what should I do with my life? You already decided. Now you execute. Your main target should be the thing that creates the biggest leverage. Leverage means progress here makes other progress easier. If your finances are unstable, getting control of cash flow might be leverage because it reduces stress and frees options. If your health is falling apart, rebuilding your energy might be leverage because everything is harder when you're exhausted. If your career is stuck, building a key skill might be leverage because it increases income, confidence, and mobility. Supporting targets are small and protective. They keep your life from collapsing while you focus. If your main target is career, a supporting target might be sleep consistency. If your main target is fitness, a supporting target might be meal planning. If your main target is building a business, a supporting target might be protecting family time with boundaries, so you don't burn your relationships down while chasing progress. Now you might think, what about all the other goals? The answer is simple, not now, not because they don't matter, because you can't do everything at full intensity at the same time without paying a price. The price is quality, sanity, and follow through. Here's the next technique. Calculate opportunity cost in plain language. Opportunity cost is what you give up when you choose something. Most people act like they can choose an option without giving anything up. Then they get angry when reality charges them. If you choose to spend 3 hours a night scrolling, the opportunity cost might be the side project you claim you want. If you choose to say yes to every social plan, the opportunity cost might be consistent training. If you choose to chase a shiny new strategy every week, the opportunity cost might be the compounding effect of staying with a good plan long enough to get results. So you will start asking, if I say yes to this, what am I saying no to? Not in a dramatic way, in an honest way. Because honesty is what makes you free. Now let's add a tool that disciplined people use without even realizing it. Second-order thinking. First-order thinking is immediate. It says, this feels good now. This solves the short-term discomfort. Second-order thinking asks, and then what? You skip the workout because you're tired, and then what? You feel relieved for an hour, and then you feel guilty. And then you're less likely to work out tomorrow, and then you lose trust in yourself. And then the goal gets heavier again. That's the chain. You decide to take on an extra project at work to look impressive, and then what? You gain short-term praise, and then your schedule tightens, and then your health slips, and then your performance drops, and then your reputation suffers anyway. That's the chain. Second-order thinking doesn't make you paranoid, it makes you strategic. It forces you to see consequences before you pay for them. Try this in real life. Next time you're about to make a choice you know you've made before, pause and ask, if I do this, what will be true in a week, in a month, in 6 months? Most bad decisions look fine in the next hour. They look stupid in the next season. Now we bring it back to turning ideas into action, because prioritization without execution is just planning theater. You need a method that turns the chosen priority into daily movement. Here's the technique. Define your one daily win. Your one daily win is the smallest meaningful action that advances your main target, not the perfect action, not the most impressive action. The action that, if done consistently, makes failure unlikely. If your main target is building a service business, your daily win might be one piece of outreach, or one sales conversation, or one improvement to your offer. If your main target is fitness, your daily win might be showing up for the session, or hitting a step count, or prepping the next day's meals. If your main target is a career shift, your daily win might be one application, one networking message, or 1 hour of building a portfolio project. This matters because the brain loves to create complex to-do lists. Complex lists give you an excuse to feel overwhelmed. One daily win removes negotiation. It gives you a clear target that can't hide behind confusion. Now let's talk about a mistake people make when they start prioritizing. They try to rely on willpower. Willpower is a limited resource. It drains with stress, hunger, lack of sleep, and constant decision-making. The disciplined person doesn't worship willpower. They design their environment so the right choice is easier. So here's your next technique. Build friction for bad habits and remove friction for good habits. A woman in Arizona wants to stop ordering takeout every night. She keeps telling herself she'll be better, but her environment makes takeout effortless and cooking feel like a battle. So she changes the system. Instead of begging for motivation, she chooses 3 simple dinners she can repeat. She shops on Sunday. She chops ingredients ahead of time. She keeps a clean pan ready. She deletes delivery apps from her phone and decides that if she truly wants takeout, she has to physically drive to pick it up. That single change adds friction. Suddenly, the default shifts, not because she became a saint, because she became strategic. You can do this anywhere. If social media steals your time, remove it from your home screen, log out, and require a password. If you want to write, keep a document open and ready, and keep your phone in another room for the first 20 minutes. If you want to train, pack your gym bag and put it by the door. You are not trying to become a different species. You're building a setup that supports the person you're trying to be. Now let's go deeper, because some choices aren't about habits. They're about direction. And direction decisions can paralyze people because they feel permanent. This is where a powerful technique comes in. Reversible versus irreversible decisions. Some decisions are reversible. You can try a class, test a side hustle, volunteer in an industry, shadow someone, run a short-term challenge, publish a small project. If it doesn't fit, you can stop without destroying your life. These should be made quickly because speed creates learning. Other decisions are harder to reverse. Quitting a job without a plan, taking on significant debt without clear payoff, moving your family across the country without support. These deserve more thought and a stronger test pathway. The point is not to fear irreversible choices. The point is to earn them. You earn them by running reversible tests that reduce uncertainty first. A man in Washington wants to leave corporate life and start a trades business. Instead of quitting immediately, he sets a season. He keeps his job and spends 8 weeks running weekend tests. He learns what customers actually request, what jobs are most profitable, and what he enjoys. He learns what tools matter and what's just noise. By the time he considers leaving his job, the decision is no longer emotional, it's informed. He has data, not dreams. That's what critical thinking does. It turns life decisions from dramatic leaps into structured transitions. Now you might be thinking, what if I choose the wrong main target? That fear is normal, but you're not choosing a lifetime prison sentence. You're choosing a season, and seasons can change based on results. The only wrong choice is refusing to choose at all and letting your days get spent by default. Default living is the quiet thief. It steals your goals with convenience. It steals your standards with distraction. It steals your future with busy. So you will make a disciplined promise to yourself. I will not let my priorities be decided by my inbox, my feed, or someone else's urgency. You decide, then you act, then you adjust. As you close this chapter in your mind, Bring your focus to your own life. What is the one main target that would create the most leverage for you right now? And what two supporting targets would protect it? What is the opportunity cost of the way you've been spending your evenings? And what are you willing to trade to get your future back? Where have you been making first-order choices that feel good today, but create pain tomorrow? And what second-order consequence are you ready to stop paying for? What is your one daily win? The action that makes progress almost inevitable if you do it consistently. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now, let's continue. Chapter 5. Let reality coach you. You've already learned to turn ideas into tests, to measure what matters instead of chasing emotional highs and lows, and to run a clean loop of observe, interpret, decide, execute. You've built defenses against bias, and you've learned how to choose one main target, so your effort stops getting diluted by clutter. Now we take the next step, because the fastest way to waste action is to act in isolation. Most people say they want results, but what they really want is to avoid judgment. They want progress without exposure. They want to improve without being seen as a beginner. That's a fantasy. In the real world, your idea becomes real only when it meets other people. Real constraints, real standards, real consequences. If you want to turn ideas into action that actually changes your life, you have to let reality coach you. Reality coaches you through feedback. Not always polite feedback. Not always clear feedback. Sometimes feedback is silence. Sometimes it's rejection. Sometimes it's a customer who disappears. Sometimes it's a sore shoulder that tells you your form is off. Sometimes it's your bank account reminding you your plan is not a plan unless the numbers work. The disciplined person doesn't take feedback personally. They take it seriously. Here's what most people do. They act, get a reaction, and then they start defending themselves in their head. They argue with the feedback instead of learning from it. They find reasons it doesn't count. They blame timing, the economy, the algorithm, the other person's attitude. Some of those factors may be real, but if you lean on them too early, you shut down the only path to improvement. So here's the technique. Treat feedback as a signal, not a sentence. A signal gives direction. A sentence gives finality. A signal says, adjust your approach. A sentence says, stop trying. Builders live by signals. Let's make this concrete with a story. A woman in North Carolina has an idea for a small online shop selling custom gift boxes. She builds a beautiful website, takes perfect product photos, posts on social media, and waits. A few likes come in, no sales. Her first interpretation is emotional. People don't want this. I'm wasting my time. But she forces herself to think like a builder. She asks, what is the signal here? The signal might be that the offer isn't clear, or the price feels too high for what people see, or she's reaching the wrong audience, or the product is better suited for corporate gifting than individual shoppers. Those are all different problems, and each requires a different adjustment, so she runs a feedback-focused test. She messages 10 people who fit the target customer and asks a simple question. If you were buying a gift box this month, what would make you choose one brand over another? She hears patterns. People care about delivery speed, personalization, and how easy it is to order, so she simplifies her options, adds clear delivery timelines, and creates a faster checkout. Then she runs another test. She offers a limited run for a specific occasion. With a clear deadline, sales arrive. Not because she manifested anything, because she listened to reality and adjusted her system. Now you need a way to collect feedback without drowning in opinions, because not all feedback is equal. Some people give advice based on what makes them feel smart. Some people tell you what they think you want to hear. Some people criticize because they're insecure. And some people have no idea what they're talking about, but they speak confidently anyway. So you need filters. Here's a strong one. Prioritize feedback from people who have skin in the game. If you're building a service, prioritize feedback from people who are actually willing to pay or who already paid. If you're building a career move, prioritize feedback from hiring managers, recruiters, or people doing the job right now. If you're building fitness, prioritize feedback from your body, from performance markers, and from a qualified coach or clinician when necessary, not from random comments online. Skin in the game feedback is grounded. It's connected to real outcomes. It's often specific, and specificity is gold. This leads to another technique that makes you sharper immediately. Ask for feedback that is about behavior, not personality. Behavior feedback sounds like, your offer is unclear, your email is too long, your pricing page doesn't explain the value, your first minute loses me, your form breaks down at the end of the set. Personality feedback sounds like, you're not cut out for this, you're not charismatic, you're just not business-minded. Personality feedback is usually noise. Behavior feedback is actionable, so when you ask for feedback, guide the person. Don't ask, what do you think? That invites vague opinions. Ask, where did you get confused? What would you need to see to trust this? What part felt unnecessary? What would you change to make this easier to buy, easier to use, easier to follow? Those questions pull out useful signals. Now let's talk about the kind of feedback that people fear the most: rejection. Rejection is not a stop sign. Rejection is a sorting mechanism. It tells you something about fit, timing, messaging, or value. If you interpret rejection as identity, you shrink. If you interpret rejection as data, you grow. There's a man in Massachusetts who wants to move into sales. He applies for roles and gets turned down. His story says, "I'm not good enough." But he chooses a different lens. He starts tracking rejections. He notices a pattern. He gets interviews, but he fails late-stage interviews, where he's asked to explain how he handles objections and manages a pipeline. That's not a verdict. That's a skill gap. So he builds a test plan around that gap. He studies real sales call frameworks. In a simple, non-copied way, he practices with a friend, records himself, and learns to speak in outcomes and process instead of vague confidence. Then he interviews again. This time he advances. Rejection didn't stop him, it trained him. This is a mental discipline. You don't argue with the result. You ask what the result is teaching you. Now we go deeper. Because feedback only helps if you can recover quickly. If every hit to your ego knocks you out for a week, you will be inconsistent. The world doesn't reward people who are occasionally brilliant. It rewards people who show up repeatedly. So here's the next technique. Shorten your recovery time. Recovery time is the gap between a disappointment and your next productive action. The amateur needs days. The builder needs hours. The elite builder sometimes needs minutes. This doesn't mean you become a robot. It means you stop letting emotions on your calendar. How do you shorten recovery time? You pre-plan your response to setbacks. You decide what you do. When things don't go your way, if you don't get the client, You send 2 more outreaches that day if you miss a workout. You do a lighter session the next day, instead of punishing yourself with a crazy one. If a post flops, you review it for clarity and run the next one with one improvement. If you get negative feedback, you isolate what's actionable, adjust, and keep moving. This is what it means to be disciplined. You are not surprised by friction, and you don't make friction mean you're failing. Now, feedback can also become a trap when you chase it too hard. Some people become addicted to external validation. They keep changing direction based on every comment, every trend, every piece of advice. That's just another way to avoid commitment. So here's the balancing technique. Feedback informs, but your standards decide. Your standards are the internal rules you live by. Your standards say, I deliver quality, I follow through, I keep my word, I practice even when no one is watching. Feedback tells you where to improve. Standards tell you whether you keep going. This is how you avoid being tossed around by noise. There's a woman in Colorado building a small coaching service. She posts content and gets mixed reactions. Some love it, some criticize. If she lets feedback decide her identity, she'll panic and change her voice every week. But she anchors in standards. She chooses to speak clearly, to be direct, to serve a specific audience, and to improve her clarity and usefulness over time. She uses feedback to refine, not to reshape herself into a stranger. That is stability. Stability is power. Now we bring all of this back to action with a tool you can use immediately. The weekly feedback meeting with yourself. Once a week, you sit down for 15 minutes. You look at what you did, what happened, and what you will change. You don't shame yourself. You don't hype yourself. You judge your system like a builder. You ask, what did I do consistently? What did I avoid? What worked better than expected? What failed and why? What is the next small test? What is the one change I will make this week? Then you schedule the next actions. You turn reflection into execution. This is how you keep your progress from becoming random. This is how you create compounding improvement. Most people live in a blur. Builders live in cycles. And here's the final mindset shift for this chapter. You are not trying to be perfect. You are trying to be correctable. Perfect is fragile. Correctable is strong. A correctable person can take a hit and still move. A correctable person can hear uncomfortable truth and still act. A correctable person can adjust without losing their identity. That's what makes them dangerous in the best way. They can't be stopped by normal obstacles because obstacles become instruction. So bring this home to your life. Where have you been avoiding feedback because you're protecting your ego? What signal have you been calling a sentence? And how would your next step change if you treated it as data? Who is a person with skin in the game? Whose feedback would actually sharpen your next test? What rule will you set for your recovery time? So disappointment stops stealing days from you. What will your weekly feedback meeting reveal? About what you're consistently doing, what you're consistently avoiding, and what single change would create the most leverage in the next 7 days. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now, let's continue. Chapter 6. Become the person who executes. You've learned to separate facts from stories, so you don't get hypnotized by your own excuses. You've learned to shrink big ideas into the next physical action, run short tests, and use real indicators to guide your progress. You've learned to cut through bias, choose a main target for a season, and let reality coach you through feedback. without letting noise steal your direction. Now the final step is not another trick, it's an identity decision. Because the real finish line is not completing a project. The real finish line is becoming the kind of person who can take any idea, apply clear thinking, and execute under real conditions. Most people want the outcome without earning the identity. They want the business without becoming a builder. They want the body without becoming consistent. They want the career without becoming valuable. They want the confidence without doing the reps that create it. They're chasing a feeling. Instead of building a standard, your life changes when your standards become non-negotiable. A standard is not a goal. A goal is a destination. A standard is how you live while you travel. Goals come and go. Standards stay. Standards tell you what you do on the days you don't feel like it. Standards protect you from the version of you that tries to negotiate when discomfort shows up. Think about the people you respect, not the people who talk big, the people who quietly produce. They don't look for motivation every morning. They don't need a perfect environment. They don't waste weeks complaining about how hard it is. They decide what matters, they do the work, they learn, and they repeat. That's available to you, but you won't stumble into it. You have to choose it, and then you have to build it. So here's the identity shift. You are not a person with potential. You are a person with policies. Policies are the rules you follow regardless of mood. They don't have to be complicated. They have to be consistent. A policy might be, I do my one daily win before I consume entertainment. A policy might be, I keep promises I make to myself. Even when no one is watching. A policy might be, I don't make important decisions when I'm hungry, angry, lonely, or exhausted. A policy might be, I run tests, I don't run fantasies. Policies turn thinking into behavior. Behavior turns into outcomes. Outcomes turn into identity. Now you might be thinking, that sounds strict. It is, but it's not punishment, it's liberation, because without structure, you are at the mercy of your impulses and your environment. With structure, you can be tired and still win. You can be stressed and still progress. You can be busy and still build. In the US, there's a lot of talk about freedom, but the deepest freedom is self-control. The ability to choose your actions instead of being dragged by your habits. Now we're going to tie everything together into a simple execution system you can carry for the rest of your life. First, you choose the season. One main target, two supporting targets. You already know how to do this. The main target is leverage. The supporting targets protect you from falling apart while you focus. Second, you define your one daily win, the smallest meaningful action that moves the main target forward. This is the anchor. When the week gets chaotic, the daily win keeps you from drifting. Third, you run tests with rules. You decide what has to be true. You choose a test that takes less than a week. You use leading indicators. You use decision windows. So later stops stealing your life. You don't over-research. Without a decision, it supports. Fourth, you build feedback into the system. You collect signals from people with skin in the game. You ask for behavior feedback, not personality judgments. You shorten recovery time. You stay correctable, not perfect. Fifth, you review weekly. A 15-minute meeting with yourself. Observe what happened, interpret it without drama, decide one change, execute the next cycle. One change, not 10. Clean learning, clean progress, that's the system. It's not fancy. It doesn't need a brand name, it needs you to do it. Now let's talk about the final obstacle that lives inside almost everyone. The fear that you'll start and then fail, and then it will mean something about you. Here's what it means if you fail. You were brave enough to test. You were disciplined enough to act. You are honest enough to let reality answer you. Failure is not an identity. It's a result from a specific method under specific conditions. Change the method, adjust the conditions, run the next test. The only failure that matters is the failure to engage, the failure to choose, the failure to act, the failure to learn, because when you refuse to engage, you still pay a cost. You pay it in regret. You pay it in self-doubt. You pay it in watching other people live the life you could have built. So you're going to stop asking for guarantees. Life doesn't give them. The market doesn't give them. People don't give them. Your body doesn't give them. The guarantee comes from you. It comes from your policies, your standards, your cycles. The guarantee is, I will not stop at the first discomfort. I will not stop at the first rejection. I will not stop at the first imperfect result. I will adjust and continue. That promise is rare. That promise is powerful. That promise changes everything. Now I want you to picture a future version of you, not the fantasy version with perfect lighting and effortless confidence. The real version, the version who has made hundreds of small correct decisions, the version who has run dozens of tests, the version who has taken feedback without collapsing, the version who knows how to prioritize, how to cut noise, how to move even when tired. That version of you doesn't need motivational speeches. They have momentum, they have self-trust, they have a track record. Self-trust is not built by wishing, it's built by evidence. Evidence comes from action. So your job is to start creating evidence immediately. Not tomorrow, not when things calm down, not when the perfect opportunity shows up. Now, with whatever life you currently have, if you're working long hours, your daily win might be small. Good. Small is sustainable. If you have family responsibilities, your test might be modest. Good. Modest is repeatable if you're starting from scratch. Your first steps might be messy. Good. Messy is real. The world is full of people who are waiting to feel ready. The winners are the people who are willing to feel unready and act anyway. And here's another truth. Your environment will try to pull you back. People around you may not understand why you're changing. Some will tease you. Some will doubt you. Some will be supportive. Until your consistency makes them uncomfortable. That's normal. You don't need everyone to understand. You need your standards to hold. This is where your internal discipline becomes visible, not through talking about your goals, through the quiet choices you make. When no one is applauding, you will have nights where distraction is calling you. You will have mornings where the bed is warm and your goals feel far away. You will have weekends where comfort seems more appealing than progress. In those moments, you won't rely on feelings, you'll rely on your policies. Do the daily win, protect the season. Run the test, collect the signal, adjust, repeat. Over time, something shifts. You stop being a person who needs a push. You become a person who moves. You stop being someone who hopes things work out. You become someone who makes things work out through structured effort. And that's what this audiobook has been building toward. Not information, transformation through execution. Now bring it back to the most practical level. Identify the idea that keeps returning. The one that refuses to leave you alone. State it clearly in one sentence. Identify what has to be true for it to work. Choose a test you can run in less than a week. Define the leading indicator you will measure. Set a decision window so you don't drift. Define your one daily win. Decide your recovery rule for setbacks. Schedule your weekly review. Then do the next physical action. Not after you feel confident. Not after you get permission. Not after you do one more round of research. Do it because action creates information, and information creates power. Your life will not change because you listen to an audiobook. Your life will change because you used what you heard to take disciplined action, then used what happened to think better, then used that thinking to act again. That cycle is how builders are made. So now, as you step out of this final chapter and back into your real day, let these questions live in your mind without needing immediate answers. What is your season right now? And what main target will create the most leverage if you commit to it? What is your one daily win? The action that protects your momentum even on hard days. What decision rule will keep you from letting emotions write policy? And what feedback signal have you been avoiding? That could sharpen your next move if you keep your standards non-negotiable for the next 30 days. What proof will you create about who you really are, and what will become possible because you finally stopped waiting? If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this.